Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Look Into Bitcoin, and today we're going to be looking at Bitcoin dominance. To do this, we'll be using a number of resources that are all freely available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. If you haven't already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. So right now I'm just here on the Look Into Bitcoin site, and specifically on the live price chart page we have here, we have the Bitcoin versus Ethereum ratio. Now what this is looking at is essentially how much Bitcoin you could buy with one Ethereum. So right now this figure stands at 0.0627 BTC you could exchange one Ethereum for. You can see over the past year we've had some cyclical ups and downs, but generally we've been trending towards the downside. If we go onto an all-time chart as well, we can see here, while Ethereum is up quite substantially versus Bitcoin on a much more macro long-term basis, but we can see in the most recent bull cycle, we did actually fail to make new all-time highs of Ethereum versus this Bitcoin ratio, which maybe suggests that the long-term potential, the upside potential, potentially Ethereum growing in comparison versus Bitcoin may have peaked already. Obviously, this is just some speculation. As we can see, this is also sort of coiling towards the upside with higher lows. But what we can do is look at something like this, but rather than just focusing on one altcoin being Ethereum, we could look at the entire crypto industry to see how all altcoins, all stable coins compared to Bitcoin, which is the Bitcoin dominance metric. And this actually gives us a lot of useful information. So quickly, I'll just mention we did actually cover a Bitcoin dominance video a few months back where we discussed the potential for a Bitcoin dominant explosion to the upside with a potential massive rally leading to Bitcoin far outperforming most altcoins. And we drew this almost resistance, this key level line, it just beneath 49% on the Bitcoin dominance chart. And what we can see here is if I just zoom in a little bit, we can see over the past few weeks and months, we have actually broken substantially above this line, come back, retested it, almost turned it into support if you're into technical analysis. And it looks like we may be actually curling back to the upside to potentially continue even higher. Now, as we said, the Bitcoin dominance is looking at the total crypto market cap and seeing what percentage of that is made up solely of BTC. So right now we can see this is currently at around 50%. So the entire total crypto market cap, 50% of that is purely just Bitcoin. What we can actually use with this data is to try and gain a more accurate representation of where we may be in the cycle. If we just load up the Bitcoin price chart here, this orange line, we can see there is a clear correlation a lot of the time. But what we can see is this is on almost inverse correlation. We can see once Bitcoin dominance is decreasing, this tends to be in the tail end of a bull cycle when the Bitcoin price is increasing. This is because as we get some more exuberant price action, people are getting incredibly greedy in the markets and trying to squeeze out every last bit of profit, people tend to rotate their capital into more speculative assets. So we may see a cycle start from stable coins, people holding their assets in either real fiat currencies or maybe USD Tether, and then we'll usually rotate into Bitcoin, especially at the start of a cycle when price action's really just kicking off to the upside. We can see Bitcoin dominance usually increases along with this. And we can see once we increase quite rapidly the Bitcoin price, people tend to look to more smaller market cap plays, maybe rotate into Ethereum and some other large cap altcoins before really going into the not so useful projects, we'll call them. And that's when we see Bitcoin dominance really drop to the downside. It's happened in every single cycle so far. But what we can see is this transitionary phase between bear cycle and into bull cycle. We do actually tend to see Bitcoin dominance stay a little stagnant before increasing a little bit. So we've seen here Bitcoin price action has been quite boring recently, and we have seen Bitcoin dominance increase marginally, but not exponentially. But I think if we do really see and confirm that the next bull cycle is just around the corner, we could already argue that we are in a bull cycle, but I can't say the price action has been exciting enough for me to really get too over the top with that. But what we can say is if we are potentially going into a bull cycle, we can expect Bitcoin dominance to, as it has previously, increase quite noticeably. So one thing we can see is in each of the last cycles, Bitcoin dominance has reached a lower peak. So we can see in the 2016, 2017 into 2018 bull cycle, we had a very high Bitcoin dominance. And in the most recent cycle into 2020 and 2021, it didn't actually reach highs this high. It kind of diluted somewhat. I think this is just because more and more altcoins, more and more stable coins are entering the space. People are trying to squeeze out every last bit of capital efficiency they can. And obviously a lot of altcoins are being created to try and provide some utility, and stable coins that maybe mimic the price of certain fiat currencies are of course as well gaining a lot of popularity, as they do have a lot of use cases for not only traders but people maybe entering the crypto space for the first time. So as this dilution effect happens, we might not see Bitcoin dominance climb as high as we maybe have previously. What we could do is maybe anticipate we could reach a key level that was potentially a turning point previously in the Bitcoin dominance. So I think around 60%. This also lines up with this downwards trend line I've just drawn in here. So maybe we have a little bit of confluence to see Bitcoin dominance maybe rally over the next few months and potentially even year or so to this 60% level. And what we can also do, this 60% level also provides confluence in another factor. So here I'm on a chart which is using quite a custom weird ticker just up here, and this is 100 minus the Bitcoin dominance minus the dominance of the three largest stablecoins. So this is basically looking at the altcoin dominance in the crypto markets. So every altcoin excluding the three major stablecoins to see the dominance that they make up. Coins like Ethereum, Binance Coin, pretty much anything you can imagine comes under this metric. And we can see this is currently sat at just around 40%. So if we were to invert this, we could see again that if Bitcoin was to maybe inflow the capitals from these stable coins like we usually tend to see in the early stages of a bull cycle, then this again could be the fuel to really push Bitcoin up to a 60% dominance level. So what we then can do is look at a chart like this, which is the total crypto market cap multiplied by value of 0.6, which would give a 60% dominance level, and just dividing that by the Bitcoin supply, which would give us the price of Bitcoin if we were to reach a 60% dominance. And we can see this price action chart looks very similar to the standard Bitcoin price. We can see if I just load up here, they're almost mimicked one-to-one, but there are times when there is a little bit of a divergence between these, when the Bitcoin dominance is either in the very early stages of a bull cycle when it's extremely high, or the late stages of a bull cycle where it's extremely low. But we can see right now, if the Bitcoin dominance was currently at 60%, we'd see a Bitcoin price of over $35,000. Now, as I film this, we're closer to $29,000, so that'd be quite a little increase in price. But if we look at something like the previous all-time high, we can see where we almost had a double top in price action looking at the normal chart, where Bitcoin made its all-time high at above $60,000, and then the next all-time high we set a few months later was only fractionally above that. We can see with this dominance chart implemented that we actually had quite a significantly higher all-time high following this. So if we do continue to see a Bitcoin dominance increase, we could maybe have some fuel to take Bitcoin to potentially much higher prices, because the all-time high we would set if Bitcoin dominance were to have stayed at 60% was over $95,000, which I wouldn't complain at all. And just for fun, what we can do is look at if Bitcoin was the only cryptocurrency and the entire crypto market cap was completely made up of Bitcoin. So I'm just dividing the total crypto market cap by the Bitcoin supply, which would give us a current price of just above $59,000 and a previous all-time high of $159,500. So maybe not a bad price target for the next cycle. But something we can also look at is the fear and greed index, which is, if you weren't already aware, actually taking into account a lot of stats, potentially giving some indication on where maybe capital inflows and outflows may be going in the coming weeks and months. Because one of the key metrics that makes up this fear and greed index value is actually the dominance of Bitcoin relative to other cryptocurrencies. So something we've just discussed now. And we can see we've actually been very stable for a very prolonged period of time in this neutral area. So we can see a lot of altcoins are potentially decreasing relative to Bitcoin just because there's not as much excitement, not as much greedy emotions within the market. We can see once Bitcoin has these exponential price rises, again, where we see Bitcoin dominance increase before decreasing quite substantially, this is when the fear and greed index really gets into these very greedy up to towards 100 values, which really indicates that maybe a lot of people are getting greedy and, as we said, moving capital into more speculative assets. And once we see this decrease exponentially, again, this lines up pretty nicely with when we see the Bitcoin dominance begin to start bottoming out and increasing as capital starts to move out of altcoins, generally due to their underperformance during bear cycles, as a lot of them share an almost one-to-one correlation with Bitcoin. Really, it's just trying to increase pretty much your leverage by trading these altcoins. While they may increase your profits in the bull cycle, they're definitely going to increase your drawdowns in the bear cycle. So just to summarize, the Bitcoin dominance metric looks at the total percentage of the entire crypto market cap that is made up of solely Bitcoin. And we can see recently this is actually broken above the key level of just beneath 50%, potentially giving us some indication that we're likely to see the Bitcoin dominance increase further over the coming weeks and months, which is actually a bit more of a bullish sign, as this is pretty typical in the early stages of a bull cycle. We can also use this metric as well as something like the fear and greed index to potentially gauge when maybe the market is getting a little overheated, when we see the same in reverse, where we see money flow from more safer assets like Bitcoin into more speculative assets like small market cap cryptocurrencies. And as more and more stable coins and altcoins come into existence, like we discussed, we may be witnessing a temporary diluting effect for Bitcoin. As we could see on the Bitcoin dominance chart, we're not actually reaching peaks as high as we previously have done. Of course, this could change this cycle, but it's likely that the trend is going to continue as more and more altcoins are created. However, what we can say is that this may be unlikely to always be the case as Bitcoin matures, because just generally as Bitcoin continues to grow, mature, more capital inflows come into the cryptocurrency space, and generally it just proves the test of time, and we see more and more altcoins begin to fail. We see more and more stable coins coming into existence. I've just seen that there's a new PayPal stablecoin that's potentially going to be released. Of course, I think a lot of these are going to maybe not stand the test of time so much, and we are maybe going to get a lot more capital inflows into the Bitcoin and potentially other altcoins. But I think right now, where we see tens of thousands of different altcoin projects, I can definitely see this number contracting to potentially just a few altcoins with a bit more of a use case, and that can potentially create this nice ecosystem around Bitcoin. If you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to live chats, in-depth newsletters, indicator alerts, private TradingView scripts, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know in the comments down below and on social media, what are your thoughts with the Bitcoin dominance? Are there any altcoins you're looking at currently that do you think maybe will outperform Bitcoin in the next cycle? As I said, let me know. I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.